We're going to wait just one more minute before we get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It's good to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Connie, Frederick, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I think you've been on meetings, but just hadn't been showing your face. So I appreciate seeing people occasionally. I know there are days that I don't want to be seen on Zoom, so sometimes you need a break from it. We're going to start today with a presentation from Christy Landis from Sooner Start, who's going to talk about how COVID-19 pandemic has affected Sooner Start services. Christy, I'm going to turn over the screen to you and you can start sharing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invite to be here. And hopefully, I feel like I've had enough practice doing that, but I feel like inevitably when I go to share something, it goes horribly wrong. So here's hopeful. So I'm going to begin my share and my slideshow. And if I could just get a thumbs up that y'all can see the beginning title slide.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's get rocking and rolling. So let me introduce myself. My name is Christy Landis, and I work for the Oklahoma State Department of Education, specifically for the early intervention program known as Sooner Start. So I'm part of the Oklahoma State Department of Ed state team, and because we are a collaborative agency, we also have some health department folks that work with us to make sure that we have a seamless program that goes across all 77 counties of the great state of Oklahoma. So in talking about this topic, I'm sure like you, it probably brought up a lot of PTSD of what that looked like at the time for Sooner Start. So when we moved to virtual, we had several things that we needed to overcome. One of them was, quite frankly, the law that governs Sooner Start, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act Part C. And there was zero pause in this law. There is no dispensation from the Pope. There's nothing. The law never had a pause. We continue to go forward. We had to meet our federal requirements. We had to issue services to families that we had promised within their individualized family service plan. So all of those requirements were still on the table. So we spent a lot of time as a state leadership team on Zoom, working day and night to try to get what our program would look like when we found out very, very early on that there was no 2 weeks to stop the curve, that we were going to be embedded within our homes for quite some time. Unfortunately for us and the other states and territories within early intervention, there was zero guidance that was issued from the Office of Special Education Program, which is the overseer of IDEA Part C. It's who we answer to. In October of 2020, there was a document issued that addressed 3 components of IDEA Part C. And if you've ever seen a federal law, 3 components are a very, very small slice of that pie. And so a lot of things that we did, we just had to do what we thought was in the best interest of our families. And what we did is we called that putting people over process. And my heart is near and dear to early intervention. I was an early intervention mama with my kid and an early intervention Mimi with my grandbaby. So I wanted to make sure that whatever we did, we were doing that was in the best interest of families. So we had all of our forms converted to fillable PDFs by our data manager so that our staff could utilize them on their laptops. And we have a database, but we have forms that you could type or fill in, but we needed signatures as well on a lot of these forms. And so we utilized our parent portal which is within our database, but not all parents have access to that because they're not all tech savvy or don't want access to it. We did do a little bit of, well, we'll ask for, we'll say we're sorry later instead of asking for permission. So we did a lot of verbal documentation for signatures, which means we had to create forms for that. We had to embed them within our progress notes and things just so that we had multiple ways of going back and saying, this family gave us permission for this. We did porch drop-offs, we did porch pickups, we did whatever we needed to do to make sure that we got signatures to evaluate, signatures for service, signatures for IFSPs, everything that we needed a signature for. We just found our way through it. So with that, we are a home visitation program, and there was no home visitation that could happen. And so we got very, very creative very quickly. We used FaceTime when we could. Most of our employees are not contractors. They are state education employees or state health employees. So with their use of their encrypted phones, they're all iPhones, so we could utilize that. We, under the OSDE administration, we were able to expand our capacity on Zoom accounts. The agency quickly ramped that up. So we had access to multiple Zoom accounts that we could not only let our employees use, but the Oklahoma State Department of Health employees use as well. And our coordinator, Carla Miles, just set a calendar for that so that people weren't bumping each other out or getting into each other's meetings with that, since it was a limited number. We try to use Teams as much as we can. I feel like Teams has come much, much further than it was in COVID. It was a little sketchy in the beginning. We did some phone calls, and we also, OSDE purchased several MIECHVs that we were then able to distribute to our program managers throughout the state that could loan those portable Wi-Fi adapters to families so that they could have access to internet as well. Some of the challenges that our families face was in rural settings, there is not equitable internet access for those families. There's like dead spots everywhere. It just became very hard. And a lot of times in rural areas, when you do have access to internet, there are school-age children that were home that were using that internet and using those computers. And anyone who has kids at home knows when they get on a computer, your Wi-Fi access goes down the drain. So that was a challenge. Most of us don't have multiple laptops, multiple devices to utilize. So trying to plan according to the parent schedule. Some families had 0 electronic devices to be able to do some type of virtual access. It was also hard because a lot of what we do is our interaction style, I should say, with our families is a family coaching and caregiver model or interaction style, which means that we follow the lead of that adult in the household, which means that we cater to their adult learning style. And for some people, that is watching and learning, and that's really hard to do when you're talking through a screen and the baby's on the other side of it. Some of the benefits are we did offer more flexible scheduling for our families, which is true evidence-based practices and early intervention, meeting the family where they are within the natural routine that they're trying to mimic or utilize at that time. The families had to get a lot more hands-on and interactive, which was outside the comfort zone for some of them. But that's really what we want to happen. We want to build their capability, their capacity, and their confidence in what they're doing, that they are the expert on that child. And we don't have the magic. The magic happens at home. And so that really gave families a lot more ownership in early intervention sessions and service provision sessions. And so that was a good thing. And honestly, as someone who was a Sooner Start mama, not having to clean your house before your service provider came over is pretty awesome. So even though we try to establish those interactions that lead to good, positive relationships with our families, any of us knows when someone comes in our house, we are immediately going to like worry if our baseboards are clean, that nobody's going to like somebody's going to walk around with a white glove and see if you have, you know, dust on your ceiling fan and different things. So it really helped a lot of families feel like they didn't need to wrangle the environment to be made ready for us. Now for our staff, our service provision practitioners are all Oklahoma State Department of Health employees. So that means our PTs, OTs, our SLPs, child development specialists, all of those people are health department employees. And when you are a health department employee and you have a public health emergency, your job duty becomes secondary to that public health emergency. So we had to really navigate when our OTs and our motor providers were being pulled off to direct traffic at health departments, like what that looked like. And so we had to work in tandem as a leadership team to make sure that the health department side understood that the services couldn't stop. We are still on the hook for them. The law does not just go away because of a public health emergency, where if you have something like child guidance or vaccines or the different things that health departments have, there is no federal mandate to continue to provide services during that time, unlike IDEA Part C, just like the schools were experiencing as well, how to navigate that. They really had to work up on their coaching skills because they're not in the home, they're not handling the child, they're having to verbally and visually help that family navigate that. So it did have, you know, some of them had an easier time with that than the providers who are much more hands-on and want to be in there, you know, manipulating the child and everything like that. And our staff had technology skills issues as well, as we soon found out. But I feel like we're a lot better at what we do now. The benefits are we did grow coaching capacity of our providers. We did provide a more open and flexible schedule for our family, stronger parent involvement, which is what we always want to happen. And we did grow our tech skills during that time, which has benefited us after post-COVID, I guess you can say. So let's look at the impact to the program as a whole. When I'm talking about this, I'm talking about our referrals, our evaluation process to be part of Sooner Start, family dynamics, staffing, and our service provisions, which is our service delivery promised to our families. So we saw a tremendous decrease in referrals, a lot of people who just did not want to be part of virtual services. We had to train on a new evaluation tool because what we utilize right now is the Battelle Developmental Inventory 3, which has manipulatives and requires a two-team, in our policies requires 2 team members to be present for that. And so in looking at what some of the other states were doing, they were doing things in parking lots, behind door. It got really complicated. And so what we did is we made a decision to utilize the DP3, the developmental profile, and we purchased several of, because it could be done virtually and it is more a question and answer than the BDI is. And so we trained our people on it. We got that tool, we got them access, and we purchased so many of those evaluations prior. And the administration and OSDE did a fantastic job of getting that fast tracked and approved as quickly as possible for a state agency. And so that's what we used. It allowed one provider to do that tool. And it was just, even though under the law we are required to, we did what we needed to do in order to assure that families got services and they understood whether or not they could meet the requirements of being part of Sooner Start. Our family dynamics changed tremendously, financial issues, mental health issues, routines-based issues. So that's when our resource coordinators, who are State Department of Ed employees, came in and really ramped up what resources were available to those families in all of those different areas and kept those apprised, made frequent contacts with our families through text messages, phone calls, emails to check in on them and see what they were doing. Staffing was impacted because of, like I said, the other obligations with the State Department of Health people, as well as, we have a high group of, people who are in family situations in our organization, and they had school-age children home, and they had non-school age children home that would typically be in childcare that weren't open. And so they were impacted as well and tried to navigate themselves around all of those different things. We did a lot of self-care training online to help our people and hook them up with resources, as we were all on the struggle bus at that point. Service provision. We lost families during this. They just disappeared. They stopped making contacts way more than normal. We struggled with our ability to meet our federal timelines and how it was done. Like I said, we had no guidance on this from the Office of Special Education Program. And so we just really had to push forward and do the best that we could do. We did a COVID-19 plan that we put on our website that was approved both by the State Department of Ed and State Department of Health, that at the time was tied into those color codes that we had. If you remember that, the red, the yellow, the orange, the green, all of those things is what we utilized. So that's a really brief overview of how we had, how we dealt with COVID in early intervention. This is my contact information if you have questions later about Sooner Start as a whole or anything like that. But right now, what I'll do is just open it up to any questions or comments you may have for me at this point before y'all get further into your meeting.
Thank you, Christy. Questions, comments for Christy?
Well, I either did a really fantastic job or.
This is Susan. I think you did do a fantastic job. And Connie, Frederick, and I are both with Children First home visiting program. So we also had the same concerns around home visitation and what is that going to look like. And I think I remember looking at your plan when we were trying to create our plan. So we appreciate that you all had that out there. And it was not an easy time.
It was
and thank you for summarizing so well the challenges that you had, because there were other organizations like Children First that we were kind of in the same boat. And the same thing with, I think what really hit me is the fact that we have staff that also have school-age children. Right. So, trying to be flexible and work around everyone's schedules was very, very stressful, but I think we did it.
I did too. There's so many. I'm a big proponent of, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the energy bus, but it's called silver lining or solution. And to me, the silver lining in all of this is that we now have another tool in our tool belt with our families, which is virtual services. As anyone who is dealing with discipline specific, that it's not an Oklahoma thing, it's a nationwide thing. I don't know where these people are. They're like unicorns. We have such a shortage of discipline specific providers in Oklahoma and elsewhere that virtual services that we've continued to help with consultation and to help with teaming with our other service providers when they need to call in a motor provider or a speech therapist to help has been tremendous and has allowed us to increase the number of times we have those interactions with families, especially in those rural areas where in some cases getting to a family's house can take 2 hours. And so it has been a great tool, and we've continued to utilize it and work with OHCA to make sure that we can still bill Medicaid for that. And even if we can't, it's fine, because that's not what defines our services. But it was very helpful. And one of the things that I just coined with our staff over and over again, because I knew they were struggling. I was struggling. We were all struggling. It was just a whole scary time. and just, grace in the space, like the freedom to make mistakes, because we were going to make them, and we were going to have to ask for apology, or, beg forgiveness later with some of the stuff we did. Fortunately, OSEPs just kind of overlooked everything we did during that time and just went forward. But I just was a big fan of people over process and just making sure that services happen, because I know our families needed them. They just needed that outlet. And I can't imagine having to navigate. It's hard enough navigating a special needs child and the normalest of times. It's really hard to navigate that when you're stuck in your house and everything has shut down. Your access to providers, your access to specialized health, all of those things just became a huge anchor for our families that we tried so hard to help them navigate. And I think our staff did a fantastic job. They were amazing.
I think it's easy to forget how pervasive the feeling of fear was. And, you're trying to do your job while also fearing for your children and your family. And so I think you have pointed out resiliency in the agency and in the people who have helped your agency navigate these waters. So that's great. Any other comments or questions for Christy?
Yes, this is Yolanda with Oklahoma City Public Schools Parents as Teachers program. And yeah, Christy, I understand completely. We also lost contact with families for, some families, they change number very often, even before pandemic. So, try to reconnect, and we were not allowed to visit them to see, what was going on. So we also have a group of refugee families we have been serving for the last 10 years. And again, it's different when you don't speak the language, but you are face to face, and you do a lot of things, to serve families. They have, very limited English, but try to do that, try to even explain those families how we are going to set up a Zoom, a call. Or so yes, it was one of the things that I have to say is, in our case happened, we left for spring break. And I mean, we were not able to, I think they give us after spring break, maybe a day to get some stuff and work from home. But I mean, I remember parents as teachers, National Center start working in about, hey, we are allowed to do virtual, telephone calls. So I think we have some guidelines, in this case to see, of course, every single agency have to work with whatever they have. But yes, I understand what happened. And let's say like you, the team of the parent educators, they were so wonderful. I mean, without no materials, to use whatever we have in the home, or, tell the families, hey, now is the time, to use those tools, those toys, or even go outside and get, I don't know, walking in the nature, things like that. So very, very, I mean, imagination was above and beyond. So yes.
Yes, we got to find out just how creative all of us early childhood people are. We're pretty stinking creative.
Thank you, Yolanda. I think that's a great place to summarize. And Christy, thank you so much for your time. We sure appreciate it.
Oh, you are so welcome. I could sing Sooner Start forever. So I appreciate the invite, and y'all enjoy the rest of your meeting.
All right. Thank you. David or Tabitha, do you have anything to add at this point before we turn it over to John to talk about the federal site visit?
No, nothing major. I just a brief comment before we end, but it can wait.
Okay. All right. John Delara is a MIECHV grants manager, and we have a site visit coming up in February. And John, could you talk about that and what the agencies who are represented here might expect, or what's expected of them?
Yeah, so at the moment we have very limited details. All we have is the dates, but from past experience with previous site visits from HRSA, Generally, so right now we have 3 days scheduled, February 13th through the 15th. What I'm anticipating at the moment is February 14th. HRSA would like more than likely to meet with the sites and the site supervisors. At the moment, it sounds like it's going to be more of a rather informal discussion and conversation about how funding's been going, your experience with MIECHV overall the past couple of years. If we have any more details, I'll be happy to share them. But at the moment, very limited on details. I anticipate a meeting mid-January to kind of break down the agenda and what other items will be required from sites. But happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, so you'll be meeting with the HRSA folks to
Correct.
decide that agenda. So then after mid-January, you'll be able to give more details about that probably February 14th day that the supervisors at the home visiting agencies might need to be booking a meeting.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And we'll try and book a location that's central to maybe do an OKC or in the Tulsa site, depending on what the feds are able to accomplish for that day. But yeah, at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of different from our previous site visits where we usually give like a 6-month notice. So yeah, just be aware. It seems like they're a little bit more lax this time around.
All right. Questions for John?
So this will be an in-person meeting?
Yes, more than likely. As to the innovation grant work, I don't know if the site visit will also entail all the activities going on there. So as soon as I hear back for certain, all the MIECHV funded home visiting sites will definitely be asked to present or be present for the HRSA site visit. As to the like LASSO, PCAP, and the innovation activities, I'm not certain on that front, if that would be required or not.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so we don't know yet whether our referral partners in the innovation grant, like PCAP, LASSO, Sooner Start, would need to be there.
More than likely, they would like to look at the collaborative effort, but at this time, I can't say for certain. Yes.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that clarification. Good question, Pilar. Other questions for John? All right, very good. Tabitha, it's over to you.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. So I have two things I'm going to chat with you all about today. First, I want to alert you to a new resource that's been put together based on feedback we've been getting in rounding calls about Unite Us. I'm going to put it on the share screen, but this will be emailed out to you all at the conclusion of this meeting when Ms. Tunley sends everything out. I encourage you to share it with your providers who have a user ID with Unite Us. My share screen's loading. Perfect. Okay. So what we have here is a single page front and back resource with all the names listed in Unite Us. So it's easier to find the correct page at which you will place referrals. We know it's a little confusing because some sites have 2 pages, one for the innovation project and one they had before the project started, as well as other agencies and services out there with really similar names. So what you'll be able to do with this resource is navigate to the agency in whom you want to make a referral. Let's say it's LASSO, and it will tell you the exact name of the page you need to make that referral on for purposes of this project. It also lists all the potential distractors that look like the correct name but are not the correct name. So again, this is front and back. It goes through our 3 referral partners as well as all of our visiting agencies here. Some of you might have some distractor names as well. So this will be sent out. Again, please share it with your providers who are utilizing Unite Us. We've had a few referrals go to the wrong place just by mistake and understandably because these names are confusing. So we wanted to get this to you as quick as possible. Any questions, comments, feedback about the resource?
This follows up on what we talked about in the last monthly meeting where we showed that there's many of the organizations have 2 Unite Us organizations. One specifically says innovation grant in the title and the other one does not. And so we want innovation grant folks, the people who you're visiting in their homes, to be referred from your innovation grant organization to another innovation grant organization if it's going as part of your PDSA, LASSO, PCAP, or Sooner Start. So this is going into greater detail there. So thank you to Tabitha for putting that together.
I should say thank you, Lisa, for that kindness. This resource would not have been possible without Kayla, who organized the information, and our Sooner Start liaison, Elizabeth Fankhauser, who put together the actual work, and she did a beautiful job. I was just the mastermind behind it. So thank you all for your contributions. Great. And then I think it bears repeating to the point you were making, Lisa, just as a reminder that your providers don't have to be funded by MIECHV dollars to be utilizing Unite Us and using these referrals. As long as they're within your agency and are part of this project, for the time being, they will still be making referrals for the innovation grant, regardless of their funding source. The second thing I'm going to talk about today is a little bit of guidance or suggested guidance on PDSA presentations for the January learning sessions. We recognize that we've not yet been able to provide data back on the PDSAs and in those dashboards. I'm not sure if Dr. Bard went over an update on that at the top of the call, but since we won't have much data, we wanted to give you all some creative ideas about how to approach that presentation in the morning period of our learning session. Some examples already were sent out by Ms. Toonley by email, and then we wanted to show you some possible reflective questions that you could address. These aren't required, but we wanted to give you an idea of some structure of some questions you could answer during that presentation time that would be beneficial and speak to the spirit of the PDSA. So I won't read all these to you now because again, this will be sent out at the end of the call, but to just shout out some of the things we were thinking of. We want feedback on what made it possible to pursue your PDSA. So this first question being what has facilitated your use of Unite Us or made it easier to use to work on your PDSA. But we're also interested in getting more global feedback about this process and starting with this new innovation. So I'll point you to one of our last questions. What, if anything, would you change about the Unite Us system? We're hopeful now you've had some experience with it and you might have feedback for us to consider about what's been going well and what you might change to make this process even better. Yes, thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. So if you have already had your rounding call this month, you will go over these in more detail with Lisa in your rounding call in January prior to the learning session. For those of you with any remaining calls, you would have already seen this, so you will get that support in rounding calls leading up to the presentation.
Tabitha, I have a question about that. So these, questions that we are going to be answering can be in the PDSA. I'm not saying, like a slides or anything in the paper that we had the PDSA, can be answered as a form of adapt or, can be included in that. My question is because we are working in our quality endorsement, for parents and teachers, and I have to put out my say and I just want to make sure that I don't have any data in this last project. I just don't want to show something in blank. So can be this in that portion and the PDSA can be added with whatever we reflection about this last program.
Yes, absolutely. And no, thank you for your question, Yolanda. And I see David also came off mute, so he might have some words to share.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would consider, responses to these questions as data, so to speak, as qualitative data. If you have referral counts that you want to include in your presentation, you're more than welcome to do that too. We didn't call it out specifically because I know it's been harder to track for all programs, but certainly if you have that, we'd love to see it. Yeah, I have an announcement to make about data, but I'm going to save that one to the end. But I do think we're going to have some aggregate data, pretty certain of that now, to share with you collectively on the front end of the learning session. And we'll run through that as a collaborative, you know, how well we've been engaging with the system and how much referral traffic has been going back and forth with our network partners. We'll have that data, and if that helps Yolanda support your application, I'm happy to provide you those slides.
Thank you for that question, Yolanda. So again, these two resources I showed will be sent out at the conclusion of the call, and you'll get ongoing support from Lisa and rounding calls.
Thank you, Tabitha. Any other questions for Tabitha? Okay, I've already met with all but 2 programs. I have 2 rounding calls tomorrow for this month, and then we'll have a rounding call next month before the learning session. So we'll have more time to talk about it. And I'm hearing some good ideas. I know at least one recipe that has been written already, and there are 2 fairy tale kind of stories that are being written, and I'm still waiting for Yolanda to suggest her interpretive dance of her PDSA, but I'm not going to hold my breath. All right, David, would you like to take over the mic now?
Yeah, and I sort of buried the lead there. So I just wanted to update the group on data for the collaborative. We received our first data poll from Unite Us last week, and just this week we started looking at it as an internal evaluation team. We still have some things to sort of iron out in terms of our understanding of the data, but I got to say that it was thrilling, not only as a data nerd, but also as a project lead here, to see real lives being touched by this system and by your projects. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that that's not lost on us. I know we often sort of immediately go into the weeds of checking off the boxes of the PDSAs, and we're always interested in numbers, but we recognize that there's a greater purpose and cause here, and it was wonderful to see that in these data tables that were shared with us from Unite Us, and we look forward to making even more sense of those in the coming weeks. Now that we have the data poll working, we will be receiving those weekly, and our plan is to reinstitute our dashboards as you're accustomed to seeing from us. We'll probably be back at a weekly cadence, if not weekly, maybe every other week, but something on that order. And I don't know that we're going to have anything program specific ready to go before those learning sessions, but we will definitely have some data to report back for the collaborative. And I'll probably cover that in the morning session per usual format. And we'll share those slides with everyone. And if they are dual purposed for applications, that's even better. So that's my update for the group. And I think we're at the end of the agenda. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes, and I'd like to pipe up and say that the data also reflect all the work that you guys have been doing. I know it's been a lot of details, and everybody's had to be sorting through that. We've had a tremendous partner in Kayla Woodbury, so kudos to her. Kayla, is there anything that you wanted to pipe up and talk about?
Yeah, give me just a moment. I'm sorry, my computer was doing funny things, but oh, I'm sorry. And forgive my background. We had a holiday thing and you had to pick your favorite Christmas movie. So clearly you
Oh,
all,
that's great.
but I just wanted to echo what Dr. Bard said and Lisa as well. I'm so encouraged by the data I've seen. I had the opportunity to brag on this cohort earlier because in the last 2 weeks, referrals have jumped by almost 48%. Which is a huge gain, especially in the month of December. You all are doing incredible work. I am honored to work with you, and I am glad that you all accept me as a part of this group. As we continue to move forward, I'm always here for support. I'm sure things won't change in 2024. Lisa will still have my calendar link and we'll be able to forward it to you. So if you have any questions or anything pops up, and again, I want to echo what Tabitha brought up about the PDSAs. If there are improvements that you have, we just received some some feedback from LASSO this week. Those are all very important, and I always submit improvement tickets because it's not, it's actually bigger than the McVie Innovation Grant. We want to make sure that this is a platform that's easy to use for other organizations throughout the country. So if you have something, anything, then let us know and we will escalate it up and we will see if we can't make that improvement. But I just wanted to say hi, happy holidays, and I look forward to working with you all in 2024 as well.
Thank you, Kayla. That's terrific. All right. If nobody has anything else, I'd just like to say happy holidays to everybody. And I'm really grateful to get to work with all of you. You brighten my year all year long, and I appreciate all the work you put into MIECHV. And I hope you just have the best 2024. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.